Oh, okay, welcome again, everyone. Welcome to the public session. Those of us joining us online. Today is a very special day, I think, because we're having our Waterfront Design Panel Award ceremony this afternoon, which will be quite interesting and exciting and something to look forward to. But you only have one item on the agenda, King Queen Triangle, so officially call the meeting to order. And the first item is just approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look? Betsy approve, seconder? Yeah. Fatty, okay, thank you. Any conflicts of interest to declare on the part of anyone online or on the panel?
I'm gonna have to recuse myself for the King Queen Street Triangle.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. Okay, updates, Chris,
Okay.
over to you.
Leon. You wanna, you've already looked at the day's agenda, I guess.
Yep.
First updates. Do King Queen Triangle, and then we will do our awards. Put another slide there, Leon.
Yep.
Let's just go to the next one. Oh, there's a delay. Big delay. So last month we looked at the Lazy Art Terry Fox project, and they completed the design review process with full support. The team is continuing to respond to the feedback, and they have actually already made some proposed modifications to the design. They've shifted the locations of the benches a little farther away from the sculptures to try to strengthen the connection with the landscape. They've taken the panel's advice, and they're not going to be using asphalt beyond the ribbon part of the path. The two ends will be something else. I guess concrete. They're going to add some plants that will bloom early, and they're looking at now doing a kind of reveal around the sculptures where the asphalt path meets them. So I think they've actually taken a lot of our comments on board, and probably see more of that as it evolves, but I think it's really heading in the right direction. Next slide. And Love Park continues in construction. The red tile is all finished around the heart. You just can't see it because it's being protected with a wrapper of Tyvek. The catalpa tree is still alive, thankfully, in the middle of the pond.
A squirrel.
Yeah, so the project, I think we all sort of forget this, includes these little diadems. I think there's 8 of them or 10 of them, and they're just different animals that are going to be kind of hidden in the landscape that you can discover. So the squirrel looks huge in that photo.
Yeah, how big are they?
The scale, it's a different scale than the person that you see to the left. They're not that big, but yeah, there's a bunch of different animals going in there being cast. Some of the trees have gone in. I think that's along the Queen's Quay frontage. Curbing's in. It looks quite beautiful, actually. Really
When is it expected to be open?
It's going to open in the spring. We had been targeting the fall, and we decided not to open it in the fall because that would have meant commissioning the pond, and then about a week later, decommissioning the pond. So we kind of just slowed everything down on the construction. I mean, not really, but they were going to try and crank to get it all finished, and we decided not to. So it's still coming along at a good pace.
Looking good.
Pat, I don't know if you have anything you want to add on the.
We have some, they're starting to install the trellis piece that we're assisting on. And that, I think that'll all be installed in the next month.
Yeah.
So this would open like May,
This will
June,
open
something
probably
like
May, June. Yeah. Whenever it's warm enough to start commissioning water features. I think the city usually does that end of May, beginning of June.
Yeah.
Is there still the heart hanging above?
No, the
pond?
heart hanging was VE'd out of the project.
Okay.
Yep.
I kinda like that.
Well, we
Yeah.
couldn't
Value
afford it.
engineer.
Value engineer, I mean, we just, we had a lot of budget tightness on this project and it's gone through many,
Such a weird term.
many
right?
iterations.
For the engineer.
I mean, it looks exactly like the render. It's kind
It looks just like the drawing. I feel like we've drawn the drawing right on the aerial photograph.
I think it's gonna be an amazing surprise to the general public when the hoarding comes down and it's all there and like, oh my God.
Did a very nice detail with the curbing. The curbing
Yeah.
comes up and then tapers to a very thin edge. I think that's gonna be very,
Wow.
very nice.
Hard to believe there was a circular
Ramp there
ramp
not long
there
ago.
previously, you know?
I can't believe there are people.
So why, what is with all the traffic there, that jam, which I was in this morning between Bay Street and, is it because of the removal of that on ramp or what
You know,
actually is going on down there?
I'm not really sure
It's
why.
everywhere right now.
you can't turn off the garden.
And King is closed up to a certain stretch, and I think it's just like everything is being diverted everywhere.
Yeah.
I haven't seen an actual analysis of what's happening with the traffic there.
Yeah, I just keep, every
Well,
time I
it's
come
certainly
here, I
true that
keep doing the same
traffic
stupid thing
turning,
and sitting up for 15 minutes.
coming off the down the ramp and turning left to go north on York.
Yeah.
Complicates the intersection at Harvard.
Right.
Everybody's trying to do this. all
That's
at
right.
the
Yeah,
same time.
that's right.
And you can't turn on Simcoe earlier. There's no turns. So
Yeah.
you're gonna come off the ramp and then you gotta go way around the whole, like.
Yeah, or you turn right and then you do an immediate U-turn in the middle of Simcoe, which a lot of people do, because I cycle on that road and people are constantly doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, next slide.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
You want to go through the upcoming agenda, Leon?
Yeah, so next month will be the last DRP meeting of this year,
Right.
and we are looking at Reach Street Park schematic design coming back. We also are hoping to bring both Destination Playground and the Destination Playground Pavilion back as well for schematic design. Jenna will be, her team is working on the pavilion. And for January next year, we are looking at bring back the Villiers stretch of the Waterfront East LRT back to the panel. You've previously seen various segments of this East LRT. I think this will be a schematic design review, actually. And of course, Parliament Slip. That one is also gearing to come back for schematic design.
Yeah, the Waterfront East LRT, part of why we're bringing it back is we've made a couple changes to the original proposal, so we want to share those with the panel.
Has the pool moved in,
Oh, Parliament, I was talking about Villiers. In Parliament Slip, well, maybe. We're contemplating a few. You guys gave us a pretty robust set of comments on it. So we've been reconceiving a whole bunch of aspects of it. So it's going to look fairly different, I think, than what you saw last time.
And obviously looking further ahead, Ontario Place is still February, March.
Whenever, we're not
Spring
sure.
sometime,
We don't know
or-
exactly when, but they've said they're going to come back in the new year, so.
And it'll come back for the public realm and the actual private sector projects for issues ID or two separate reviews.
Unclear. It may well be that the buildings go on a separate track from the public realm. It's not really, up to us to decide how they're gonna phase it, so I think that's what they had been contemplating. I think one of the comments I got from this panel was you need to look at them together, so I don't know if they will be able to take that on board or not, but.
this is just an aside, like one of my colleagues was telling me there was a survey from population and all that, and there's a lot of support for lots of changes there.
Sorry, for what?
For changes, for, like bringing new things in terms of, so it's an interesting thing just to hear what the community, what the broader population is saying, that, they'll want to see something. What it is, it's a different story, but.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of anticipation of what's next for Ontario Place. So. Okay, I think that's it for the agenda, right?
Yep.
Is there anything else on our update? Nope, I think
Nope,
that's it.
So again, officially welcome everyone who is online and who's joining us today. We have one major item on the agenda this morning, the King Queen Triangle. It's here for issues identification, so there will not be a panel vote at the end. And I believe Chloe, you're there. I see you. You're going to do the introduction. So can you hear us okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep. So
Great.
take it away.
All right. So let me hang on. I am, as you can see, not in my office or at home. So let me just make sure. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Chloe Gatan, and I am the Public Art Program Manager for Waterfront Toronto, and I will be introducing this really exciting project. On the ancestral territory and crossroads stewarded by the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Treaty Territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, this project is located centrally to the area of the West Don Lands and shall acknowledge and represent the ancestral connections among the many Indigenous communities and nations this territory has supported from time immemorial. The King-Queen Triangle is formed by the intersection of Queen, King, and River Streets. The funding comes from developer Section 37 contributions for permanent art to create a gateway feature for the Corktown neighbourhood. Working closely with Indigenous public art curator Ryan Rice, Waterfront Toronto issued an open call to Indigenous artists for artwork that would contribute towards celebrating and acknowledging historical and contemporary Indigenous visual culture as city placemaking. The proposal that we're presenting today was selected through competition by an Indigenous Evaluation Committee. A technical advisory committee was also set up to review and advise on the technical elements of this project and is comprised of subject matter experts from stakeholders such as Parks, Forestry and Recreation and Economic Development and Culture divisions of the city, the TRCA and Waterfront Toronto. The DRP panel review will focus on ensuring that the landscape design supports and reinforces the artistic conception of the project and creates a strong public space. The sculptural works will not be reviewed by the panel. Here's the aerial view of the site and its context. The West Don Lands was originally a marshland that became industrialized, and it occupies a unique site at the original mouth of the Don River. The area was a challenging brownfield site in the floodplain of the Don River that required remediation and flood protection before any redevelopment could occur. Again, the triangle is located at the intersections of King, Queen, and River Streets, which currently forms the eastern gateway into the Corktown neighbourhood. The triangle of land slopes down towards Bayview Extension and under the Queen Street Viaduct in the direction of the Don River. A forked pedestrian path runs through the site. The site forms part of the flood protection feature that sits beneath Corktown Common, the feature that protects this part of the city from the Don River in severe storms. Here's an aerial perspective of the site where you can see the adjacent buildings, the street details, the streetcar tracks on King and Queen Streets, the bus stop on King, and the forked path through the site. The river is nestled in the green swathe at the top of the slide. The triangular parcel of line is approximately 1,265 square meters. So the vision for this public art opportunity is to transform this undefined transitory area wedged between high traffic transportation corridors into a welcoming gathering space for nearby communities and the public at large. Given that the site received minimal public realm treatment, artists were given the opportunity to alter the site's landscape in order to accommodate the artwork and make the area more welcoming and accessible to the public. However, this can only be done in ways that do not undermine the integrity of the landform. So artists had to identify and subcontract a landscape architect familiar with the constraints and opportunities posed by this landform. This is the site looking west towards River Street from two different perspectives. On the left of the screen, the pedestrian path forks ahead, and on the right of the screen, you can see the two mounds created for the FPL, the Flood Protection Landform. I'll read out the objectives set out in the artist call because I think they're important to keep in mind as we move forward. So the list of the objectives in the call to the artist read as follows. The artwork should be a suitable scale for maximum visibility from multiple vantage points and a distinct prominent feature of the king-queen triangle. Should be harmonious with and contribute to the surrounding realm. Should reconfigure the site in such a way as to render it welcoming and functional as a public space. Should be welcoming, reflective, and inclusive of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis visitors. Should make a vibrant statement through the artwork to celebrate Indigenous art, culture, and heritage. Should be mindful of the architectural environment and sightlines. Should be attentive to engaging with diverse communities, urban bustle, and transient space. It should be mindful of public safety. Should positively influence territorial recognition and the multiple histories of place. Should be a bridge between urban infrastructure and the renaturalized environment. It should make a conscientious effort to welcome accessibility, inclusivity. Should connect patterns of movement drawn from the roots and the adjacent river. And finally, it should be durable and low maintenance. This is looking east towards the Don River. You can see how the path through the site leads down under the Queen Street Viaduct to the Bayview extension in the direction of the railway tracks and the Don River. There's a fence between Bayview and the river, so there's no direct access to the water. You have to walk or drive across the viaduct to cross it. This shows the public art Waterfront Toronto has installed in the West Don lands. There are currently 7 artworks in the precinct, including works on Front Street, Mill Street, Corktown Common, and Underpass Park. The King-Queen Triangle site is right at the top of the precinct boundary. And then the Anishinaabe Health Toronto site is down at Cherry and Mill in the other red circle. And that's the second site for Indigenous public art that is being commissioned and worked on by Waterfront Toronto. They were both these projects were actually commissioned together through the same artist call because we felt curatorially they connected to each other. So the major constraint at the site is the flood protection landform, and under no circumstances can this be penetrated. Attention must be given to the grading and drainage of the site. The crest of the FPL is the dark green line running down the middle, and it's the most sensitive area. Nothing can be anchored or planted on top of it or in the very near vicinity. Everything to the right of this crest is the wet side of the FPL, i.e. the light green area, and it lies within the floodplain regulated by the TRCA. Everything to the left of it is the dry side, where most of the artwork can be anchored. This has the same constraints as the wet side of Corktown Common. The yellow area marks the clearance area for the underground water infrastructure. So any permanent structures need to allow for future maintenance access. The pink area is the right of way and needs to be steered cleared of. And the orange areas are the 2 berms that have sufficient cover to allow for deeper anchoring and plantings. A couple of other things that need to be kept in mind are that the area on the south side of River Street needs to be accessible for maintenance trucks to pull up. And any new pathways need to be a minimum of 2.1 meters for accessibility. This shows the underground infrastructure with the storm sewer running through the site, the middle of the site, and another water main parallel to River Street. There's a Rogers cable and an abandoned gas line running east-west. And then the green, the sort of thin green line running right from the top to the bottom of the slide is the TRCA regulation limit for the FPL. And then, of course, there's the dark green crest line. And so far as the project, the Waterfront Toronto's role is the overall project manager. And will also make sure that the site is handed over to the city. The Culture Division will maintain the artwork, and the Parks Division of the city will maintain the landscaping. The project timeline. So we started public consultation together with Ryan Rice, the Indigenous Public Art Curator, in May and June 2021, so that we could write the commissioning documents. And then we moved forward with the artist calls in July through to November 2021. And a winning artist team was selected in June 2022. Right now we are at issues ID for the DRP. And straight after this, the artists will start community consultation through to February next year. We're hoping to come to the DRP for schematic design in the new year. And then quickly after for detailed design. We are planning to sort of fabricate and install between winter 2023 and spring 2024 and open the project in the summer 2024. This is where we are in the DRP stage and issues ID. And finally, a few areas for you to consider as you hear the artist team present the project. 3 very high-level questions to keep in mind. 1, does the landscape strategy respond to the site context and key flood constraints? 2, do the planting approach and material palette support the overall artistic narrative? And 3, does the overall landscape proposal support a successful public realm for the neighborhood? And with that, I will pass this on to Mireille Bourgeois, who is the artistic director of IOTA Studios, who are the project managers for the artist team.
Thank you, Chloe.
We're just going to fix the messaging that keeps popping up on the screen. Just give us a second.
I'll stop presenting, and then perhaps Mireille can just sort of
I'll pull up my slides.
Yeah, so you can move them forward on your end.
I think we're okay now. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great.
Yeah, go ahead. We're okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna. Here. How does everything look? Can you see my slides?
Yes. Yeah, we're good.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So our team is highly experienced and includes Blackwell and their structural engineers who have worked on Jordan Bennett's well-known installation Tefkik, and is experienced also in working closely with Indigenous individuals and artists. Mulvi and Benani are our electrical and lighting engineers and can integrate lighting design into the sculptures and walking paths. Grounding engineering are our geotechnical engineers and will provide recommendations for foundations and earthworks. We will be working with fabricator Punch Clock Metalworks, a metal fabricator located right in Toronto and have public art experience at the nearby sites. IOTA Studios, my organization, are the project managers for this public art portion, and Benjamin Matthews is our landscape designers, working closely with the artists selected for this opportunity, Amy Malbeuf and Jordan Bennett. So led by the RFP requirements and also the project concept and the artistic concepts, the project principles and goals are creating a strong relationship to the surrounding streets and communities, creating a sense of comfort in an exposed and constrained space, encouraging visits and welcoming the public to stay. A landscape that further enriches the project narrative, tree and plant species selection that reinforce the overall concept, an emphasis on connections to water and the river, material innovations that weave into the storytelling, reaching outwards across the man-made boundaries of the street, the bridge, and the steep fall to the river system below. I'll pass it over to artist Jordan Bennett to continue presenting.
Thank you, Mireille. I'm here on behalf of my team, myself, Jordan Bennett, and Amy Malbeuf. Amy can't join us this morning, but I'm going to be presenting on behalf of our project. So when we looked at this project, our research questions were, what is the history of the Don River? Who gathered here in the past, who presently gathers here, and who will gather here into the future? And how do we convey a sense of community through the triangle design? Next slide, please. So Amy and I are both artistic collaborators, but also partners in life. So we are married and we go on lots of adventures in art and life. And when we first came up with this concept, we applied various overlapping concepts to the site. We approached the site concept very personally, and here pictured are some photos of when myself and Amy navigated the Churchill River alongside of other Indigenous artists quite a few years ago. It was a 10-day trip on the land, and it was through this journey that we noticed and were really a part of the land and the waterways and how quickly they can change and how much the waterways can form and change landscape and the way that we navigate and commune and gather on these places. So the site will speak to contemporary Indigenous realities in this way, the resilience of our communities have in the face of colonization and constantly changing realities that we face as humans in this time of climate, political, cultural, and socioeconomic change. The sculpture elements pulled from our experiences in navigating, we'll pull from our experiences in navigating and living off of the land, contending with the water during this time. It's from there that we imagine various sculptural elements that one may have in their canoe if they were in a position of surviving and thriving in a natural event like a flood. Next image, please. When all the sculptural elements are pulled together with the landscaping elements, the site will convey this multiplicity of story and history and contemporary Indigenous realities. Next slide. We're interested in the history of the Don itself. We want to explore the natural meander it once had before it was straightened. So you can just flick through some of these slides, Midway. And looking at the history of how people navigated this riverway before the industrialization of the city and the straightening of the meander itself. We looked into and explored the sediment and depositation of different rack lines that can be formed throughout the movement of water and how those rack lines deposit debris, natural and man-made, along the rivers and along waterways throughout our communities and our gathering places in cities such as Toronto. Next slide, please. And through this concept, we in conversation with Ben Matthews, we came up with the idea of exploring the storm rack and placing our sculptural forms within the landscape in the triangle to really echo and create a narrative through the placement of each piece itself. Next slide. Ben, I don't know if you wanted to speak about any of these, the meandering and the storm rack.
This is sort of more contextual to the site and just looking at the various ways that debris start to hang up on bridges or natural features and how we might sort of learn from that and start to convey a story on the site that is both sculptural and landscape driven, that sort of hints to a possible event or a future use of this site through its forms and sort of sedimentation of natural materials, but also man-made materials.
Next slide. And here are some examples of the more man-made deposits that you see and may be familiar with in the city. So showing this history, and you can really see the history of a place or an event or a moment or an individual story through the depositation of different elements. Next, please. So discovery through movement, and this is huge for us, is creating this narrative for visitors, for people coming through the space, and for people who call this part of town home. And the gathering of multiple stories and material histories is parallel to the city of Toronto as a site where various Indigenous nations have historically and still reside and gather today. As I mentioned earlier, we pulled inspiration from a canoe trip that we were on. From this inspiration and experience, we were able to place ourselves in a creative space to conceptualize this project. Through meeting with local community, next slide, and invested community groups. We will continue to refine and explore this inspiration and add to the concept. And we're really excited to be coming to the city to meet with folks in the near future. The objects that we place in the land are figuratively and metaphorically what you might take with you to survive and thrive in the event of the catastrophic flood. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, their placement depends on how they would physically be deposited due to the rise of water levels and where they sit on the rack lines created by the rise of water. Through thinking about the resilience of Indigenous people, of hardships faced, and how we have continued to thrive through our use of humor, color, and art from our respective communities, we imagined a whimsical, colorful installation teeming with points of conversation, visiting, and awe for everyone who passes through the space. Next photo, please. The sculptural elements are relatable, they're tangible, and can generate an individual's own stories or narratives from their own point of reference. Some examples of which are a canoe and a cultural belonging such as a smudge bowl and other things that you may have with you on this trip. This point of thriving. The power of the object comes from the relatability of the objects. They pull story from the individual visitors to the site so that they can sit with and visit with their own stories. And for myself and Amy and our team, this idea of visiting is very important as it informs our communities still today. Thank you. Next.
Thanks, Jordan. So this is the site plan as it stands today. Again, you're seeing the FPL crest sort of halfway through that site with the dashed line. And everything on the right side of that is the wet side, on the left side, the dry side. As in nature, I think a lot of the sort of deposits, landscape and also sculptural, occur above this crest as if sort of they had washed over in one of these larger events and begun to sort of cluster around natural features, rock outcroppings, trees, little gullies in the landscape. There are a couple features below this FPL crest that we'd like to explore. They do become more complex with the low cover above the landform. Next slide, please. You'll see too that we're quite tight on space here in terms of the orientation and sort of site circulation. As Chloe mentioned, those red areas are sort of the prime zones for larger objects, whether sculptural or natural trees, whereas the yellow and red zones need to be quite clear of permanent structures. The green, and we can speak to this more, but we would hope to augment the existing tall grass prairie. However, the sort of landscape investment again is above the FPL crest. Next slide, please. You'll see here, this is the existing grading plan. Above the FPL crest, slopes are around 2%. However, as you start to move down towards the river, the pathway is just above 10%. For the time being, we've been told to leave the path as is. So the accessibility on that portion is a bit limited. Next slide, please. We're going to be looking here at an aerial view of the site. And so you'll see existing, there are actually 17 small trees, pyramidal oaks and maples. Some of them were actually planted on the wet side of the FPL, which they should not have, and others are not doing so great. So we will need to replace trees as we move forward and also increase the amount. The existing hardscape is asphalt pathway, and there are 8 large slabs of armor stone as well that we have considered for removal or reuse on site. And then, as you saw in the earlier photos, there's the concrete abutments that sort of create the triangle. Next slide, please. So the planting palette is and hardscape palette are such to start to really amplify the feeling of the riverine system below. This is the first moment as you approach from the west that you would get a hint of the dawn, perhaps. And so in this small space, we'd really like to have those sorts of species and materials that you might find on the sort of upper banks of the river. The hardwood pioneering, the tallgrass prairie surrounding, starting to play with stone and different ways in which it might occur on site, whether in large granite boulders like the ones that are there already, all the way down to smaller cobbles and even resin-bound paving, which will allow for better permeability in the small site and one which doesn't have a lot of hard stormwater infrastructure. The other piece of the sort of material puzzle is the furniture. If you go to the next slide, please, which is expressed in a few small wooden benches that start to cup the landscape areas and accentuate the soft curves of the rack lines. We're excited to explore sourcing of these materials that is eco-friendly, and also starting to explore the sort of form of these, looking to play off of those images that we saw of the sort of debris formations around bridges, how these timber furniture can really become unique and expressive. Next slide, please. Here we are looking from the north side across the sort of main plaza space adjacent to River Street. The planting areas are, all native plants. They are low maintenance. The hardscape areas, you'll see there's sort of pads of varying colors and shapes. These would be the resin-bound pads in the foreground, the main pathway as well. Next slide, please. Just a front-on view to the wooden benches. These would be places to stop and invite people to stay a while. They would also be opportunities for additional lighting beyond what is supplied at the street and in the sculptures. Next slide, please. So again, just in terms of planting, the wet side augmentation of the existing high grass prairie, which really has become currently a mown lawn. It hasn't been maintained the way it could be, and so we'd like to look into maintenance strategies that will allow for that to become much more natural. And then the feeling of the shoreline really wants to be expressed on this side of the FPL crest, and we'll be working hopefully with the TRCA, with parks, and also groups involved with the Don River and Portland's projects, Minokamik, to start to think about plantings that are both ecologically valuable, but culturally as well. Next slide, please. In terms of lighting, we don't hope, it's a small zone, so no additional lampposts will be needed, we don't think. Lighting will be much more sort of aesthetic and architectural with a little bit of path lighting needed. So soft washes over trees and grasses, as well as onto sculptures. We'll be working with Mulvey and Benani to explore solar options should we have to disconnect from the adjacent infrastructure. So really excited to get that going with them and find some cool strategies. Next slide, please. Just quickly on maintenance, As Chloe mentioned, we will require access from the River Street side. So those two orange rectangles would allow for a maintenance vehicle to pull off of the street and park temporarily. And the sculptures will be sort of within plantings, and then that will need to be cleared every so often. But there will be no differential settlement concerns because of the softness of the materials around the sculptures. Next slide, please. And this is finally a view looking through the grasses eastward in the evening. Jordan, do you want to speak to this one? I think this is a really playful moment.
Yeah, so this is an example of when I was talking about earlier, this thriving and this use of humor within our communities, and looking forward to see the bright in sometimes the dark. So this is just one way of us to show this thriving, this resilience of Indigenous people, and this joy and playfulness that our community still holds strong in our everyday. So, well, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll go to questions from the panel, and I'll alternate back and forth between those in person and those online. So let's start with in person. George, do you want to kick it off?
Okay, thank you, Paul. I just have one question about the topography. You showed a plan with contour lines, but it went by rather quickly. I'm just trying to understand the section. Well, there's also I guess it may be uncertain for you at the moment whether you're keeping the existing path or replacing it with new paving. But my question is, does the path peak? Does the path peak at the crest line and then go back down again to the west? It
That's
looks
right.
on your drawings as though it's more or less flat through there. But it peaks along with the rest of the landscape, does it?
The pathway does peak at the crest, and then it sort of slopes also towards those planting areas from the street. So there's a bit of a crest line as well that follows the Y-shaped path. So all water would be sheeted across the pathway to those planting areas where possible. But yes, we are cresting at the pathway.
Okay,
Do you want to take another look at that slide? Should we bring up that slide, or are you okay?
Okay,
That answer?
thank you.
Okay, thank you, George. Nina Marie, you have questions?
Well, I think it might have been answered. I assume that there is a fixed path that's paved for accessibility, but are there plans or possibilities for other paths that might be dynamic through the wet side, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing that we should explore. If there was sort of, perhaps you're talking about more of a stepstone or exploratory path through that zone. I think could be exciting, and we need to make sure we work with the TRCA and also the sort of the specifications of the FPL to make sure that we're not founding too deep into the structure. But I think that would be a really lovely addition to the project.
I can come back to that in comments. Thank you.
Also, you know what, I'd like to add to that quickly. I mean, Nina Marie, it also depends, it's highly dependable on the budget, right? Because this doesn't have, I mean, the budget for this whole project, I mean, it's in the call, is $1 million. So, you know, it's, you know, I think that would really dictate, right? I mean, I think that there's so many things that could be done, but I think, you know, it'll all come down to budget, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I can return to that in comments. Thank you, I understand.
Okay, Fatty?
Just to clarify one more time. So the path has to stay as is in its location and its shape.
No, we've been instructed to keep the path as is below the crest because it is, particularly because it is at 10%. So any change would require that to come into, to be an accessible path. Above it, we have changed the areas. They have been expanded. It's not sort of the 2-meter pathway anymore. It is larger plaza. However, still there, we are sort of constrained by the existing infrastructure. So the planting and sculptural areas are dictated, more or less.
Thanks.
Okay, Matthew, any questions?
Sure, Paul, just before I start, I'm just gonna be do full disclosure. I was involved in the selection of Ryan Rice as a curator with Chloe a few years ago, but it ended right there. I wasn't involved in the selection of the artists for either one of the sites, and Truro has no adjacencies on this site, so I think it's fair for me to ask questions and comment. My first question is, the flood protection line, are we aware, or do you know how often it floods up to that point, and is that a common occurrence?
Maybe I can try and answer that one. I think the TRCA's approach to that flood line is it can't really have anything in it. So Corktown Common is the same. We have that line, which is the differentiator between the wet side and the dry side. And on the wet side, the regulations are quite stringent. So if you walk around Corktown, there's trees and paths and light poles until you get to that spot, and then there's nothing but grass. It's not a very frequent occurrence, but because it's the regulatory storm event, those are the restrictions that TRCA has placed on anything that's within that flood line. So anywhere, not just here, there's heavy limitations on placing anything in that. But we struggle with this even in the Portland's flood protection project, because we wanted to put a few more things down within the flood zone, and we couldn't do it. So
yeah, it's too bad, because it's almost like there's a cutoff point where you guys can't touch anything on the site, and it's a really exciting kind of western part of it. My other comment is, question is, who are you planning on speaking to from the Indigenous community in the city? Do you have any idea of who's on that list so far?
Yeah, we're going to be speaking to Minukemik. We're going to come in to meet in person with those folks, and we're going to meet with the communities that are invested in this project, the Corkland Commons, and I know some folks in those groups are Indigenous folks, and we're going to rely on this visit to open up the doors. We don't want to just contact random people, but I think myself and Amy, our process as Indigenous people ourselves is to meet with community and then be like, hey, names come up, and it's like, oh yeah, you should talk to this person, you should talk to this person. So we built in time to visit with people while we're there at the same time. If we have these breakout meetings with community members during this time, or if that creates opportunity for us to meet with invested individuals, we will definitely be doing that as well. We have a large community of Indigenous artists in our collective here, so absolutely, there's going to be lots of people to speak to and visit with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let's go back to the panel. Gina?
Oh,
I'm sorry, Pat.
The community consultation, I mean, the sort of 5 or 6 art pieces or sites seem to be established. The kind of basic concept about what those pieces would be has been established. So how do you see community consultation overlaying or forwarding the kind of art at this point? I just find it hard to understand what's going to happen there.
Who would like to answer that?
I can speak to that. Sorry. I'll speak to that, and Mireille, you can jump in as well. So for us, it's as the artists chosen for this project, we're going to obviously have our creative hands on this project, but in conversation and through building up this concept and then talking to individuals, we want to come to like a general idea of what would be important. So there are a few things that we have in place that are definitely decided upon, but other elements that will be talked about and discussed, and I'm sure lots of laughs and cups of tea will be had to figure out what would be appropriate to put it within our vision for this project.
And just to
Does
add
that
to the
help you with that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it might not be a canoe, but it might be something else. Is that what you're saying?
This is
Or
what I
the-
was going to add to that, Jordan. Just
Or
that,
the canoe is not green, but orange? I don't know, like where is the,
The nature of the feedback and
yeah,
how it
and
might
how it
help.
can be incorporated.
Yes, sorry, can everybody hear me? I'm
Yeah,
feeling
we're
like there's
okay.
a lag. Okay, this is typically what how the artist does community consultation as well, that they come up with a general idea, and then through meetings and consultation, sometimes individuals, not necessarily full groups, it'll kind of narrow down, even in color, maybe design, the object, that may be kind of connected to their community, to the culture that's specific. Jordan, you can speak to this more clearly, but you speak a lot in your practice and in Amy's practice as well about visiting nation to nation. You are a visitor as well. And so, in visiting, you will likely discover, these symbols and these objects are different, nation to nation. And so those are some of the kind of lightning bulb moments that kind of pop up in the consultation.
Absolutely. And I think even informing this project, Amy and I have some of the folks that were involved, say, for example, with that canoe journey that we went on, are folks Indigenous people who are from Toronto, who helped inform, say, the canoe itself. So you can't quite see it in the image, but that canoe was overturned and there's a place setting on there of a feast. So these are moments where we have actually visited with community members previous to this project as we're building up our ideas to inform what could be placed within the site.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Go to Gina.
Hi, could you tell me what the grading is west of the FPL line? I know you're matching existing, but what's that slope? And second question is just, could you talk a little bit more about the resin bound paving and sort of what that is, and if you've implemented that before? Just curious about that material.
Yeah, the slopes west of the FPL will be 2%, so accessible cross slope throughout, sloping towards the planting areas where possible. The resin bound system, it's essentially it's a permeable system, so you have a decomposed granite, let's say, that has an additive that binds it together. And this sits above kind of like a honeycomb structure that gives it a little more robustness. So you can actually drive on this surface. And that sits basically on an aggregate base. So I've, in my other work with public work, for example, we've used it at the Daniels faculty. There is some resin bound there. You'll see it also at the Bentway and various other projects in Toronto. Happy to provide more information.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to Kevin. Are you there? Yep. Kevin?
Yes, I am. Thanks very much. Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, I was interested in this resin-bound paving too, so maybe when the information is passed through, we can look at it. I just want to know what maybe that resin is. But other than that, no questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. David?
Yeah, just two questions. Back to the grading question. Are you there's some dramatic topography in the those large mounds that were installed when the site was originally developed as part of the park, part of Corktown Common. It looks like I'm just getting kind of a sense of this from your plan, but it looks like you're carving it out and manipulating to some degree. But are you maintaining generally those kind of dramatic land features there?
Yeah, generally they are maintained. That the shape has been manipulated to better respond to the artwork and also the sort of new plaza spaces. They are not part of the FPL, they do provide additional cover, and so they are zones where we can put those larger structures, but we do have the ability to manipulate them in shape.
My second question, I've noticed that some of the pieces sit kind of independently in the landscape and the planting areas. Is the intent that you could access them, walk to them, or is it, or are they really meant to be a little more isolated or less accessible, I guess?
Jordan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I guess they are meant to be visited and observed. And I, like Ben said, like this is in the beginning stages of how we're going to be plotting this. As the pieces evolve, we will be definitely maybe manipulating the landscape around to match the concept. But yeah, they are meant to be visited, but also once we integrate this idea a little bit further with the rack lines, we'll be able to really see how the landscapes formed in and around each piece. So to answer your question, yes, they will be visited, but some will be a little bit higher above, just depending on the landscape.
And I'll add to that, Jordan, if you don't mind, that some of the design elements in terms of plantings or even that resin bound, ground is also going to be designed so as to kind of protect, the public from potential safety concerns. And so there's going to be that nice balance between, observing and being close to the works, but also, everything to remain safe.
Great, it's fine, thanks.
Jeff?
So I'm just wondering about the traffic patterns of the people using the pathway right now. Like, what is sort of the volume, and do you have a mode split between people walking and biking?
Chloe, could you respond to that?
No, I mean, I can't give you figures, but I mean, I think that's something that we can maybe for next time come back to you with. I mean, I visiting that site myself, I can tell you that there's quite a lot, there are a few people who sort of just come through, take their dogs a bit and then walk, kind of like just very transitory, don't stay there that much. There are quite a few cyclists that go through there. So that's what I see. It's a case of people just kind of walking through. I mean, it's one of those sites where people always, they know about, they've seen it, but they don't spend time there because there's just not much to do. It's just a sort of, and it's bizarre in the sense that when you walk through down towards the viaduct, the path doesn't really lead anywhere. It just kind of, it goes, you just smack right into Bayview Extension. So again, I mean, I think most of the people that go through that site are the cyclists, unless you just want to go and walk your dog a bit or just walk through from one end to the other. So
yeah, can you then maybe pull up the site plan, but can you talk a little bit about the cycling sort of connection from the on-street bike paths onto that path right now, and how that transition is going to work?
Murray, do you have the presentation there, or shall I share?
I do, yes. I'm just wondering which slide you'd like me to pull up.
Well, I mean,
Just
like any, the aerial, yeah.
I'm not sure I mean, it's such a small space that encouraging cycling is a bit difficult because of the constraints. There are connections sort of south of there that get you down to Bayview. But it is, I don't know that we would want to have a sort of formal bike connection through there. Of course, cyclists would be welcome, but I'm not sure we'd want to encourage it.
Yeah,
would you want to discourage it?
It's a good question. I don't think so. I think there will be, if you saw the renderings, there are natural borders and sort of boulders and such that it won't be as direct a route as it is today. I wouldn't want to have a fence and a sign that says please dismount. But I think it naturally, as it gets used more by pedestrians, it will feel much more so a pedestrian zone than a cyclist zone.
Thanks.
Murray, I think slide 5, can we just take a look at maybe slide 5 or so? There's a, at the beginning, one of the context slides, there's an aerial view that shows the surrounding context. Slide 3 or so, like a foot further up.
Further up, okay, yeah.
Yeah, at the beginning.
Yes, there we go, thank you. I can't see all of the slide numbers.
There we go. Okay, there we go.
This good? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, from when I've gone to the site, I can see that most people, you know, when they walk through the site, they're crossing, King Street and go towards Queen or vice versa, right? That's the kind of they cross the site that way, kind of like at the base of the triangle. And as I say, the few cyclists just kind of go down underneath the viaduct. But mostly they kind of, the flow of people, they cross King Street going towards Queen Street or vice versa that way. I don't know if that helps, but I mean, we can definitely come back in the next session with more information on that.
Thanks.
Okay. Eric, please.
Just one question. What are the intention with regard in terms of the design, the treatment of the kind of the buttress of those wall? I see on the slide number 7, it's very predominant. Maybe go to slide 7. Yeah, I mean, they're very predominant, and you know, obviously they are probably prone to graffiti. I guess my question is there any thought, any intention about how the treatment of these surfaces would be incorporated into the design of the space in the landscape?
Can I answer that question? We have discussed it because I mean it would obviously be a really great way to kind of, because not much can be done with the wet side, it would be a great way to sort of tie the site together. Those walls belong to transportation, city transportation division. So you know, and we're working with parks and culture. But again, you know, transportation has their own requirements, you know, so it would be, you know, a different conversation. I mean, it wasn't part of the original request for proposal because, you know, they belong to transportation. So, you know, that would be like you know, another conversation. But again, it wasn't part of the call.
I think it's a very good conversation.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, just like Underpass Park, there are all sorts of requirements around inspection and maintenance. So anything that's, you know, obviously one thing is painting the you know, the walls, but as you know, I mean, if any of you have been to the Bala Underpass, it's just, there's a really beautiful indigenous you know, mural by Roland Soulière, and it's just, you know, covered in graffiti. So, you know, that's, again, like that's like, say, the easiest way of doing it, but it attracts graffiti. But then if you want to attach anything to walls that, you know, that are maintained by transportation, then you have to be able to remove it for inspections and stuff. So, you know, a bit like Underpass Park. But yeah, that's a conversation we'd have to have with transportation for sure.
Okay, Betsy.
Yeah, just a quick question. Has the site already been reinforced with riprap, similar to how the slope in front of the condo was treated when that was constructed for flood protection?
I think this is the final flood protection treatment, so I think this one needs riprap because I don't think it's exposed to too much scour because the water can't run across it.
I see. So it doesn't require that. Okay.
Okay, we've covered everyone on questions, so let's move to, I have just 2 quick questions. I wondered, and leave that slide up, in terms of, my question relates to safety, especially in the evening hours, whether there's any lighting at that end of the park as people, you know, walk down or walk up from the Don River, is one question. And another is, just, I couldn't help but notice on the other slide, the proximity of the Toronto Humane Society across the street. And I wondered if there's already been a pattern of people getting their new pets going across the street and using that as a relief area, and whether that pattern needs to be studied, broken, or adapted to, or what. So 2 questions. Not sure who can answer those.
I can speak to lighting. I mean, myself or Chloe, there is existing lighting that surrounds the perimeter of the site and actually already lights it up very well. So there was no safety lighting required as part of the project. So our lighting will be designed and to feature the artwork. So there's already enough lighting for safety, plus the artwork lighting this site will be very luminous. I can't speak to animal waste if Chloe wants to speak to animal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important. So, I mean, you're right, Paul. Like, I think we need to, there are kind of streetlights all the way around the perimeter of the site, but we need to go under the bridge and see, take a look at what it looks like at night. As for the animals, I think that's a really good point to raise with the community consultation groups, right? Like, I think that's the kind of thing that we need to talk about, like how the site is used by all sorts of community members, and that's one of them. So it's a really good point.
Okay.
Well, can I ask one question?
Sure.
Are these walls gonna have any, are they just gonna be painted? Will there be murals on them? What are these walls gonna be? Now that we're on this slide.
That was sort of Eric's point.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Plan for the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was writing my.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, again,
conversation
that's the
with
conversation
transportation.
with transportation. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed it. I was writing my.
That's okay. Now we're in
We-
the comments.
We do have that action item within our risk management log. And so we did flag it in our first kickoff meeting, I think, that these walls are a great opportunity and that it would be great if transportation did want to do something with them. The timing is very good right now to be integrated with our design. So we are moving toward it as an inquiry as part of this project.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's move to comments from the panel, and I'll take the same order again. George, kick it off.
Okay. Well, I would just suggest two things of not questioned by me, but by colleagues that I think you need to look at. One is the relationship of the pedestrians to the cyclists, because it seems to me it's important to sort of clarify their respective roles, because there could be some conflicts. And I guess the other one is just to that issue with transportation, because those walls are going to be more dominant in the visual field of the project than you might like them to be. Otherwise, I think you're headed in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Nina Marie?
Thanks. I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
Thank you very much. I recognize that this is a challenging project from a landscape constraint point of view, and that there are multiple issues around the coordination of agencies for maintenance, as we often see. So congratulations on dealing on a tiny spot with an amazing opportunity, I would say. In fact, I think there are a number of opportunities that I'm going to encourage you to explore, all of which are intended, in my mind, to amplify, accentuate, and go beyond merely supporting the artworks that you'll develop. And I think in particular, where the constraints here seem rather significant on the wet side of the crest, I actually see these as affording an amazing palette of opportunities for a landscape that really could integrate tightly with your ambition. And what I heard you talk about, or what I took from the Indigenous focused design of these sculptures and the history of the Don River, is really an emphasis on persistence, adaptation, resilience, and resurgence. And those are, I think, really powerful and evocative themes for the art, but so too for the landscape, especially given that the wet side of the landform will be also exemplifying those opportunities for the Don River. In other words, when you say that you know, for maintenance, and I recognize this is often as a fallback position to choose a native meadow, for example, in this case, tall grass prairie. The problem with tall grass, of course, is that it has very deep roots, not shallow roots. And even if they're not drilling down for water, the rhizomatic mats of these plants are so much more below surface than above grade. I feel like you might have more opportunity if you chose a palette that was really a wet meadow, that allowed, for example, for a riparian mixture of some, yes, okay, small shrubs that can be maintained, but really more forbs, grasses, sedges, reeds even, where you could allow seasonal flooding. And the reason that I asked the question about the fixed pathway is I feel like there's an opportunity that is actually very cost effective for dynamic pathways that might not even be accessible, but more visual. In other words, they might signify a path without actually having anything hard on the ground, through selective mowing or through very strategic kind of openings that would highlight these sculptures as they appear and disappear. That's of course an artistic choice on your part, but I'm just wanting to offer that I really feel an opportunity here for a tighter connection with a landscape that actually reflects your ambition, particularly around dynamism, adaptation, and resurgence, right? These plants that come back year over year and do interesting things in the wet and the dry season. I would say as a last point, just strategic mowing, not every 2 years, but actually even seasonally, where you might allow these wet ponding places in the spring that would be erased and removed by a drier, more resilient, even the familiar goldenrods that are all over the city that allow a kind of selective mowing. I mean, such hardy, resilient plants that are not going to be a problem, but rather an opportunity. Anyway, I hope that offers some food for thought around amplifying and accentuating the artworks. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Lady Marie. Fatty?
Thank you so much.
You missed Pat again.
Huh?
You missed Pat again.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
I'm next.
All right, you're next. You're next.
I just want my turn
No,
badly. I have something to say.
Good. You're on.
Yeah, I know I'm sort of invisible. I think that the real landscape scope of this project is about finding the perfect site for the art. I think it's an amazing project in the city. I think it actually could, I mean, two amazing artists. I really think it could be a place that's a destination in the city. Mm-hmm. It's not just a sort of path through. And that to that end, I mean, planting paths, bicycle, pedestrians, all that's sort of important, I agree. But I think finding those 5 or 6 sites for those pieces of art and understanding where they are with respect to the topography of the site and how planting is set amongst them is really the sort of principal scope of the landscape project. That's what I think.
Great. Thank you very much. Patty.
Sorry. Jordan, I'm a huge fan of your work, so it's really an honor to talk to you today. You're really awesome. And my redundant question was here. It's just I kept picturing how amazing this place would be for a Jordan Bennett mural and a portal to the waterfront. So if we can push that for a second phase of the project. And I really kind of just really want to echo what Pat said. I know I was scribbling down comments mentioning how much I appreciate the kind of connection and metaphor between the appropriateness of the site being close to the river, the references to this being a kind of place where riparian edges and estuaries and ecologies intersect with an urban fabric. So I really appreciate all that thinking behind it. I would just say, why does it actually have to look so natural? My first hunch was that this place has to be a destination, will be a destination to come see this art. And at the same time, these gestures do not really need to look like they are a riparian landscape in a sense. They could function as one. But my urge, my sense, my automatic reaction would be is that this ground plane, the pathways, the planting, the edges, the seating, could somehow be just, dare I say, equally graphic. Maybe not as forceful, so that it's not competing with the sculptures, but it also doesn't have to look like a kind of series of backdrop kind of follies sitting in a naturalistic looking landscape which is essentially a triangle between transportation systems. So I would just urge the design team to really look at the kind of graphic visual quality of what would be an interpretation of a natural riparian edge and let it function the way Nina Marie said so eloquently, but it doesn't have to look like it. That's my personal opinion. It's just that the two, in one way or another, can somehow support each other without them having to sit adjacent to each other, so that the art is not in any way competing with the ground plane, but that the landscape and the art are actually working together to enforce each other's functions more. So this will be a destination. And so I would imagine the ground cover and circulation and connection being just thought of as forcefully, in a sense, the way the sculptures are right now, just absolutely stunning as well.
Are we able to respond to some of the comments?
No, we'll give you a chance at the end to respond after we summarize. Thank you, Matthew.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dina Marie, Pat, and Fadi. A lot of great comments there. I would also encourage you when you're speaking to community to allow those voices to help guide you in these conversations. And I think beyond the people that you mentioned, artists and the other ones, I would really encourage you to engage with the local service providers here. You have three prominent ones, this being Anishinaabe Health, Anishinaabe Homes, and Bisbee Beak. Actually, and Council Fire are all in this area, very close to this proximity. And they would be people that are actually using this space, would be engaging with it, would be able to see what you're trying to do here. And I think what that's going to do for you is allow you to strengthen your narrative, this connection between the water's edge and what's going on with the art. So through those conversations, I think you have a great possibility to do something really amazing here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gina.
Yeah, I think I can echo what everyone else said. Really, really beautiful. Love the metaphor of the rack line. Just a powerful way of thinking about it, and also just so cheeky in response to your regulatory line, I think. And I guess what I would offer is that I have some discomfort with the transition from what's really your scope to the bike path, and I think you probably do too. So we'll just say, I mean, anything that can be done to micrograde any of the landscape to better receive water on that downhill side. Just looking at this image, for instance, like, could there be some excavation of a swale on the left side of the image along with your planting strategy, just to catch some of that water coming off 11%? And I'm assuming it's slippery in the winter and pretty treacherous. So, you know, it's either a question of, are there micro things you can do that aren't cost extensive that can help to minimize some of that challenge. Or I think the alternative is to really have your rackline concept create a really strong break in the landscape that's also clear. I think either of those ways would make me feel a little more comfortable with your existing challenges and constraints. Really excited about the resin-bound pavement. It's something we're always exploring too, how to kind of give that natural crunch, but something that's resilient and durable. And I think it's a brilliant way to create a unidirectional surface that also has some design quality and texture. So just really supportive of that idea and seeing that through. So that's what I can offer today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to online. Kevin?
Thanks very much. No comments. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Oh, okay. Thank you. David?
Yeah, thanks very much. I think this is going to be a really important project in terms of the ongoing evolution of Corktown and certainly the West Donlands. That's become, I think, quite well known for its public art installations with various references to the river and Indigenous placekeeping. So I think I think the approach of integrating all of these elements into a landscape that relates to the river, I think is really you know, a powerful and strong design direction. I was there actually on Sunday. I took a walk down here, and it was a beautiful morning. One of the things that really struck me, well, and partially through this view, I think, is that it is very chaotic. Like even on a Sunday morning, because these streets because King and Queen come so close to one another, there's streetcars and cars and and it's all kind of elevating beside you. It's a very almost uncomfortable situation, or there's a lot of kind of tension with all of that in my mind, and a lot of infrastructure that we see in that image that just disappeared. So I think the landforms are really critical in terms of creating the sense of place and helping to really integrate the pieces within a landscape. Otherwise, I think they'll just be lost in all of this really intense infrastructure, city infrastructure around them. So I think that's really critical. The other moment that really struck me is as you approach the crest, that view, if you just go back to that image, it's one of the, it's kind of a moment where the landscape begins to surround you with those large berms, and it feels a little more peaceful, frankly, and you get a sense of the river beyond, because you're looking at the Eldon Garnet Bridge, and and you see that the river must be there, but you can't see it. And the view under the bridge also gives you a kind of cue that something is beyond as well. And so I think there's something about this moment right here that should be celebrated in the design. I realize there are installations there, but that's where I would want to stop and maybe sit and kind of take it all in. So I think that's a really kind of interesting point in the plan. Anyway, just a few observations. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, Jeff.
I'm gonna be boring and stick to my my comments, but I think that the detail about dealing with cyclists needs to be addressed, and I think that's not to suggest necessarily one strategy over the other, but I think if you want to have a space where people convene, then you've got to demarcate that and somehow signal visually to cyclists, that they've got to slow down, or else you're prone to conflict. So is there other ways to route cyclists around here, or just, while maintaining accessibility, tighten up the path a little bit so that bikes, naturally slow down? I've just been around too many of these things where it's going to be a conflict, and I don't see that path being a real pedestrian friendly one. There's not really anywhere to go, so it's still going to be predominantly a bike access route as far as I can tell, unless there's another alternative route that's easier for people to get to. And then just from the city's perspective, I think that the bike paths on the street at those corners just needs to be addressed. You're going to have a lot of pedestrians standing at the intersections waiting to cross, while you're going to have bikes coming up the paths and trying to get down onto this. So what is that? That's sort of outside the scope of this, but yeah, just at those corners of King and Queen, the bike paths, it's not clear where they sort of come up. They have to go right up into the crosswalk area and then sort of juggled around some lampposts. Yeah, I think you just need to think about what that, those two corner points look like. And then that transition right at the east end of the Y there, where the path splits, where the sort of the bikers start to pick up speed going down the hill. What does that look like? Thanks.
Okay, Eric.
Well, thank you. Thank you for a great presentation. I mean, I think I agree with everything my colleague have said so far. Just I won't eat. So just a few things here about opportunity to explore. I think that there's further at the there's a discussion about the principle of gathering, creating a bit of a space of a destination somewhere, and I think that at especially along river at the top, I think there's something that could be further explored there. And I think one of the cues that I had, if you go to page 40 on your presentation for a second.
I will. Just warning you, it's going to just flip a little fast. So
that's okay.
And while she's doing that, can I just ask a question? When you say top, do you mean the apex of the triangle?
No, actually closer to the street.
Okay,
yeah.
so
and if we go there, so this is an interesting. Oh no, you could go back to the previous one. Actually, that was fine.
This one?
Yeah, this one. Now 39 is good. Slide 39.
Oh, okay. Sorry. There we go.
I'm just looking. I mean, it's probably a little bit of a caricature, but you're talking about if there's maintenance vehicle that comes and right there smack at where the people will actually have to try to access the park. Of course, you're not going to necessarily have two at the same time, but it may happen. So I think that looking at, how people, even in the worst kind of scenario, or how people come through the site, access, and how, these things are integrated within the landscape without creating accessibility issues. So maintaining the circulation, I think it's something to think about. But I think that it's almost that area. I used to live around there, and I always thought it was a great opportunity that I think there could be a bit especially around the river, a bit more of a sense of a place where you can gather, and maybe it's just a little bit generous. I think it can continue to evolve into something that is maybe a little bit more you referred to it earlier as a plaza, but maybe I think it just needs to be a little bit more than what we have there. The other comments that I have are with regard to the question about the treatment of the wall. I think that must be included. I think it's anything you can do to include that in the scope somehow, because I think it's such a predominant piece of it is part of the space. It's not the horizontal plane, it's the vertical plane, but it's absolutely part of the experience. And whether it's mural, whether it's part of the lighting. And I think one thing to just consider is this is really the carrefour, the intersection of the king, of the queen. It has a very high visibility. So how you perceive it as you come eastbound on King, eastbound on Queen, I think it's something to look at, because I think it would give some great cues. And that also includes, looking at it from during the season, in the winter, looking at the lighting, about how it is experienced, because I think that is quite interesting, because being there in the winter all the time, you could see that there's lots of opportunity that the lighting can really help to be with the sculpture, with the artwork, with the way the landform are going to be, and how this can be celebrated at night and as well in various seasons. So the experience from the various points are also something to consider.
Great, thank you. Betsy.
Yeah, just really quickly, because you've gotten some great comments. I've been looking at Google Maps, trying to figure out a way that if you could just eliminate that path through the park, because I agree with David's comments. It is such an intensely paved and traffic zone. The park has to be intense to make it a place. It can't be a small gesture. It can't be low planting. It can't be tentative hills. It has to be really, really intense. So I'd love to focus all this intensity in the dry area that's not going to get wet, and eliminate the path through, because it's just these three little islands of planting that you have to deal with. And I'd love to find a way to get you more land to plant on, more land to sculpt the kind of locations for the artwork. But as I'm looking at it, it seems like, I don't know how much a shortcut is required there. You could take the bike path downriver to get to Parktown Common. That puts you on the west side of Bayview. Do you really need to travel through the site? Can you just treat the wet area very simply and then focus on the placemaking on the top? Because this part of the city really needs a robust park like this to make it a place that people want to stop, because it'll happen if you do it the right way. But it's gonna be a great project, but I think it could be really, really great, extra level great. So just keep going. Congratulations.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just say, following on from Betsy, that could you go to the aerial photograph again? Because it's just a question of clarification. It would be toward the beginning, I think. There is already a path down to Bayview on the south side of King, but that's not a bike path, is it? Or
it's just the sidewalk.
but it doesn't, no, but it goes down the hill in addition to the sidewalk on King.
Like so much paving, like everywhere.
Can I say one more thing too? Sorry.
Let's find this image. before.
Yeah, let's get it.
The aerial. The area, there, yes. See the path going down south of King, but
River City?
Well, so,
Yeah.
yeah, but in front of River City, going down to,
That's George.
that's right.
Yeah.
That connects you through to Corktown Common as well. There's
Yeah.
like a lot of ways to get to Corktown Common from that triangle.
I'm finished.
Oh,
I just wanted to go to slide 35. Kind of further my point, which wasn't very well made.
Yeah, that was good too.
Is that 35?
This is 35, yes.
I'm looking
mean
for the
this
one
one?
that says looking east from above rivers. Yeah, that one. So just to hammer away at my point, I think that this should all be about the art. Again, I'm just saying it again. So that would mean the elimination of figure out benches differently. But like for me right now, what I'm focusing on scale wise too is wooden benches, boulder seating, and it seems to be interfering with the kind of primary point of this space. So I would try to eliminate those if I could. Or if you're going to reuse the boulders, put them somewhere where it's not kind of interfering with the reading of the sculptures.
Yeah. Okay, I think, any other last comments from anyone? No? Okay, I'm gonna try and summarize the main themes here, and I guess, first of all, and you'll get a chance to respond after the summary. And I think you're hearing a strong support and a lot of enthusiasm for this concept. Many suggestions made that I'll highlight, and I think the focus is from here on attention to detail as the design continues to evolve. So let's go through the various themes that I think the panel has shared. And I'll just start off with the importance, I guess, of having really robust community input with all the service providers and the local communities who use this space now and how they will perceive it in the future. I think that'll be invaluable to refine your concept further. Other themes about essentially having important conversation with transportation services in the city of Toronto about the retaining walls in King and Queen, obvious problem of graffiti that's there now. What was their idea, their proposal? How would they work with this design to prevent that in the future? It's an important discussion. A concern about a potential conflict between the relationship of pedestrians and cyclists. Cyclists come to a sense that perhaps with the existing path system, they may just come off King and Queen and want to just tear down that path to get to the Don River and the conflicts that would create with pedestrians, and suggestion perhaps maybe a different treatment is needed to eliminate that. Another area which will probably come up in the community consultation is the problem with pet waste, proximity of Humane Society, etc. Is that something that's a problem now, or could it become a problem in the future? Just think about that. Several suggestions about exploring a different landscape treatment, landscape material, especially on the wet side of the crest, and relating that strongly to the vegetation that one experiences along the Don River would be an important idea. Notion about the pathways, several suggestions right from maybe they should be more dynamic instead of fixed to do you even need a pathway? Focused on the intensity of the dry area, as one of our members stated, and explore even eliminating that fixed path. So I think that's a useful thing to further work on. I think various people have said that finding the perfect site for the art is key, and how the planting is set among them so that there's a a strong integration within the landscape. And also the notion of celebrating the glimpse or the view of the Don River. As you're there and you sort of go down towards the river, you can't really see the water, but you have a sense that it's out there. And there might be an opportunity there to create a special place or a spot to celebrate that glimpse and to contemplate the history of the Don, especially that one slide you had, which I found fascinating. I'd love to get a copy of that about straightening the Don River that some public works folks, I guess, must have done ages ago, and the wonderful meandering of the Don and how it was such an improvement to straighten it. So maybe all those things might be incorporated into that. And a couple of other themes about how the site, think about how the site is perceived. Yeah, that one. I love that. How the site's perceived and experienced from king and queen as a pedestrian, as a streetcar rider, as a cyclist, etc. And that sense of focus on discovery, because I think it will be a very unique, it's a very small, intimate, but very unique place in the city, and people will want to go there. And I think that element of surprise of, oh my God, look at this. I didn't know this was here. We thought I'd go and explore this, and learn more about this. All those things are very important. I think basically in summary, the panel is really enthusiastic about where this has gone so far, and we look forward to seeing it come back. And I hope those suggestions are helpful to you as you work through the details. So George is staring at this. I have a sense there's a question or a comment.
Well, which is north on this?
Big to the right.
I would.
Okay, so this is, I can't read any of these street names. This is up by Bloor then, is it?
Yeah, it's fuzzy. You can't really read it.
I'm not sure it's
I
that
don't
high.
think it's that far up.
I don't think it's that far up.
I think I can see the
So
triangle.
maybe it's sort of around
More like Gerard, I think, yeah.
So you could see the triangle, the Queen King.
Oh, there's the triangle. Yes,
Exactly.
right, yes, yes, okay, so we're here, I see, okay, so you can see the, right, okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry for that intrusion there. Fascinated by that little plan. So anyway, those are, I think, the general themes and the comments that the panel's made this morning. And again, hope they're helpful to you. So give the proponents a chance to respond. Not sure who wants to do that, but please go ahead. Jordan or anyone else?
I can, Alexis Cormier here. I'm the senior project manager on the project, specializing more in the engineering side. I can respond a little bit to the thank you for the feedback. We appreciate it, and it's so great to hear the appreciation for the artwork when that's. The artwork is not so much the topic of the discussion of this meeting, so we're so grateful that you appreciate it. The plantings on the site. So the criteria of this RFP for us was to create almost low to no maintenance landscape, and I think that's the reason why there's one of the reasons why there's such a natural aesthetic to what we've presented so far. With more dynamic plantings comes sometimes more dynamic maintenance, and maybe Ben would speak to that a little bit more. The other aspect is that the racking reference lends itself to landscape that can be absolutely found in this area or in the Don River Valley. So I think it would be a conversation, or that feedback I think would be more for Chloe to consider of what our requirements, if our requirements shift a little bit, to have more dynamic landscaping there. I could besides that, I can just say I agree the traffic planning needs to be considered, and that is another for Waterfront. We're kind of bound by the triangle, so the cyclists and pedestrians that are coming in and out are kind of outside of our jurisdiction a little bit, but yeah, there's probably some potential there, but that will come as well with some budget. I know Chloe mentioned the budget earlier, and that will come with some budget constraints, as we were sort of instructed to not touch the path, to like minimize our touching of the path as much as we could. But Chloe, yeah, if Chloe wants to speak to that more.
Yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't so much the instruction of not to touch the path. I mean, I think it was in a sense, when we talked to Parks, Forestry and Recreation, it was all about budget. I mean, like, you could do an incredible switchback, and but it would just break the budget. The whole budget would go towards that, right? Like, so I think what Parks, Forestry and Recreation was suggesting was, if you want to just focus on the dry side, and then reconfiguring that, and then just tie in to the wet side, because your budgets just won't stretch, right? I mean, I think that it wasn't like so much as a requirement, it was just a suggestion that really, we had to look at the budget constraints. I just have a quick question, and maybe this is just, I'm not a landscape architect, so maybe it might be a naive question, but I was really interested in the comment from Betsy about the idea of eliminating that pathway on the wet side, and I guess my question is, so if there, people coming from the Humane Society under the viaduct up, through towards, if they want to get to, King Street or Queen Street, wouldn't that create kind of desire lines and stuff? I mean, how would that work?
Well,
Betsy, do you wanna-
there's the sidewalk that George pointed out next to King Street. And then there is a connecting sidewalk up through to the north. So maybe it's desire lines, but maybe desire lines are Nina Marie's, runoff rivulet walking path lines.
Yeah.
Or maybe you just plant a bunch of stuff you can't walk through, which is what?
Yeah.
Another way to
Yeah. Okay, so you kind of direct them to, maybe towards the sidewalks. I get it. Okay, right.
Yeah, you make it not walkable.
But I think you have to be considered, I mean, I'm going to be the opposite voice on this. There are things happening at the bottom. I think there's a safety issue, people, there is a desire, I think, to walk there. And so I think the point though is to maybe have a holistic look at the pedestrian network to see what should the purpose or the function of that path really be in relationship to the other path, because maybe it's more walking, maybe the cycling is somewhere else. I mean, I think it's maybe having with the city a holistic look about how the system works.
I mean, because with the cycling path is very clear on river. So I'd say that if you know that you're cycling on river and you know the paths in the city, you wouldn't necessarily be inclined to shortcut down through that park if it feels more like a park and less like a bike path. I think the hard part would be if you feel like you have to kind of accommodate it, and then it's 2 meters wide and someone can cycle on it, people will. And so I'm more on the side, I'm kind of the opposite of Jeff. Like, I'm more on the side of the dissuasive design, working towards elimination, because there's lots of other ways to get there. That is not a critical cycling infrastructure piece. There are other more critical paths that are defined. I mean, they're not defined as strongly as I'd like them to be defined, but they're clearly defined and very much usable paths that, like when I'm cycling in that area, cutting through river to get to Corktown Common, I would never even think to go down through that kind of that park, just because I don't know what's the bottom of that. Like, I'm going to stay on the path. Like,
Yeah, you hit right Bayview Extension, which is super dangerous just to go right onto it. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's more like the other way, people coming from Bayview, like cutting up, right? Like rather than going down, I think.
but then there's the path that George pointed out right next, right on King Street.
Yeah.
Let me clarify. I'm not opposed to eliminating it. I just say you got to pick. Like, if you're going to accommodate it, make sure you're accommodating it. If you don't want to, discourage it. And I think there's good design ways without fencing it off to discourage it, even eliminating the path or making it a soft path. Or
I'm just trying to argue for more space for the landscape that can support the art piece in a way that you want, and not be all about more paving.
Yes, I think that's the message. So So thank you very much. I hope
Think Nina
those
Maria's
comments are helpful to you.
Oh, Nina
And
Marie's hand is up.
we'll look forward to this project when it comes back in its next form.
Nina Marie's.
Nina Marie, yeah.
Oh,
do
I'm
you want to
sorry,
say
another
something,
one.
a last comment?
Actually, I think Betsy, you've summarized it quite well. The emphasis here was not actually to create a very expensive landscape, but rather to understand the ways in which more native riparian planting can be used as in a dissuasive way to accentuate landscape, and by strategic mowing or trimming, which itself is not your primary expense. It's not a hard infrastructural cost. So I just encourage you to think about that. And the fact that tall grass prairie is exactly not what you want in this area. They're deep rooted.
I wonder if anyone else here
I got around to it.
besides me is old enough to remember that the vehicular roadway, part of which still exists,
Oh, yeah.
beyond, used to come up,
I used to drive on that all the time. Yeah.
used to come right up through this triangle to disgorge onto River Street.
I know.
And I think the path
Those are
is just a residue of the roadway that used to be there.
100%. Yeah.
Jordan.
Jordan has a comment. He can have the final word.
Jordan, do you want to have a very final word? And we're going to have to.
Sure. Thank you so much, everybody, for your comments and your suggestions. Matthew, thank you so much for pointing out the community groups that we're going to reach out to as well. And yeah, we're really looking forward to this project and making this, like you said, a destination for community and for the city. So with everything said, yeah, we're definitely, the walls were right on our radar. We believe it could be, if we can, have a conversation with infrastructure, could be a beautiful opportunity for a mural, a collaboration, possibly with a local Indigenous artist to help profile their work as well. If a further budget can be discussed and whatnot, we just want to make sure that this is a beautiful opportunity that everyone can really engage with, and it could just be a spot for people to gather. I know so many people who said they spend time as a kid in this area. So, I mean, it's not always just a pass through, but I feel like we have a great opportunity to make this a spot where people can just sit and visit. So thank you for your time today.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Best of luck. We'll see you again.
Thanks,
So,
everyone.
We're just a little bit behind, but pretty good. So officially, I guess we have to adjourn this public session now. We're going to take a break and reconvene the public session at 1:30. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Paul Bedford, Chair of the Waterfront Toronto Design Review Panel. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to participate in this unique ceremony this afternoon. Even though the sun is not shining, the sun is shining in this room because we are going to celebrate excellence on Toronto's waterfront. And our waterfront is so much the better for all the hard work of the people that are assembled in this room. I want to start our proceedings by reading our traditional land acknowledgement. So I will do that first. Waterfront Design Panel acknowledges that the land and water upon which we are all designing and building has been for thousands of years the traditional territory of many nations, including Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to diverse nations, Inuit and Métis people. The panel acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13. Mississauga of the Credit, the Waterfront Toronto Design Review Panel is committed to promoting architectural and landscape designs that are respectful of the land and water and in harmony with the natural world around them. The panel is dedicated to giving Indigenous designers opportunities to participate in the development of the waterfront. Now, I'd just like to make a couple of initial brief comments, and then I'm going to turn it over to introduce George Sigaric, our CEO, and to Chris, and then Betsy, my colleague and vice chair of the Waterfront panel here, and I are going to have the honor of presenting the awards. The Waterfront Design Review Panel reviews project proposals in the waterfront and provides expert advice to promote design excellence, improve environmental performance, ensure a cohesive approach to waterfront revitalization. This year, the Design Review Panel is inaugurating biannual awards. These will happen every 2 years that will celebrate excellence and innovation by recognizing projects and teams that have delivered outstanding designs and built projects. So you're going to hear a lot more about that in a few minutes. but it's now my absolute pleasure to welcome Waterfront Toronto CEO George Zagaric, who wanted to be here very much to witness this and to hear this and to share his own personal thoughts with you. So, George.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. And I noticed everybody was just like school-age kids. They all start at the back. Nobody takes the front rows. Anyhow, I just want to thank Paul for including me in this a great event today, our inaugural event. I don't have to go through. I'll just have a few remarks, and then we'll get to the important people in the room here and to recognize the great work that's been done. You know our mandate. We have a pretty extensive mandate. I was just talking about, one of our simple projects, the Portland's Flood Protection Project, where we're just, rerouting the mouth of a river, building an island, and then building a complete community on the island. So simple things that we can't do, honestly, without people like you. And our bar is high, and we don't apologize for that. We expect the best, and the people in this room help us contribute to the best. One of the things that we wanted to do is start off by starting to recognize some of the best work. And today we have 10 groups that are receiving part of our 7 initial awards. And I think this is really important. And I think I'd like to start by actually thanking the Design Review Panel over the years. They've really contributed. And this is, it's interesting. People fear coming in at times. And they'll phone, do I have to go to the Design Review Panel? And I said, well, yes, you do have to go. But more importantly, once you've gone through, many of you have been, some of them have been on our Design Review Panel and on the other side as well. There's value add. We end up with a better project at the end of the day. And that's really the goal of the Design Review Panel. It's not to criticize. Sorry, is that
microphone going somewhere?
Okay. It's not to criticize projects, it's to improve those projects. And we benefit Waterfront Toronto for that process. So, today we'll get a chance to reflect on some of those. So I just wanted to first thank the Design Review Panel for all the work they've done. And on top of that, we've asked you to do this, as well as to assess all of the projects, evaluate, and to recognize those projects, which takes time. So want to thank all of the Design Review Panel members. I do want to also thank all the nominees. Not everybody, unfortunately, can receive the award, but it is a recognition just to be nominated in terms of the quality of the work that we received. And I want to especially congratulate and thank those who are receiving an award today. It really is recognition of some fantastic work that has been done, that has improved the quality of the environment that we have here and the quality of work. And the design, I always say, there is no trade-off here. You can get great projects and great design. It is not a trade-off between those two. So, that we've recognized that. I think you'll get a chance to see some of those projects as we talk about the award winners, but also the nominees have done some fantastic work. So I just want to again say congratulations. I think I'm introducing Chris Blasek, who will set up the discussion for the awards. But just want to thank you for joining us today too. So we at least kept you out of the rain for the day. So thanks.
Thanks, George. The idea for these awards has been around for a little while, and so I'm happy that we are now finally doing it. The concept of the awards is to recognize design teams and their clients / developers for work at the design stage as well as at the building stage. And I think part of the reason for that is the design review panel process is a robust process. We do ask a fair bit of the design teams and their clients in going through it. But the reason we ask a lot is because we've only got one waterfront in Toronto and we really want to get it right and make it world class. And I think George has already said that the panel has been a key piece of doing that for us. The process involves coming multiple times, showing your work with an expectation that each time you get feedback, you're going to somehow action it and reflect it back in the final product. And we want to give back to those proponents who've gone through it and really embraced the process and delivered design excellence. and recognize it at the time of the design work, not many years later when the project is finally built. Though we have awards for built work as well. These awards are unique. There is no application process. There's no registration fee, no effort required by the proponents. The panel relies exclusively on the submissions that have been made, which are very extensive, as any of you have put them together would know, or site visits to the built work. Any project, in terms of eligibility, any project that has completed its final design review in the 2-year period, I have to caveat that this year it's 3 years because this was the inaugural one and we're capturing 3 years, but going forward it'll be the previous 2, and received a vote of full support at the end from the panel, is eligible to be nominated in one of 7 categories. The first 4 are really design related, so excellence in residential design, excellence in commercial or institutional design, excellence in public landscape design, and excellence in master planning urban design. And then we have another, which is also a design one, which is excellence in innovation, which includes both sustainability as well as inclusive design. The 6th is excellence in built work for any project that's had an opening or a ribbon cutting of some sort in the period of the awards. And then we have a 7th category that we call Hall of Fame, which is for older projects that have been around for at least 5 years and have really demonstrated a lasting impact on the waterfront. So you will see we have nominees in all of these categories, and a couple of them we're giving more than one award. And with that, I'm going to turn it, I think, back over to Paul, who's going to start the process. And Betsy, yes. Come on up, guys.
Hey, thanks very much, Chris. And we're just going to get right into this. 7 categories, as you've heard. And the first category is excellence in residential design. And Leon, I believe you want to share some slides as we go through this so people can relate to the different nominees. The nominees are Aqualuna, the West Don Lands, blocks 3, 4, and 7, Canary Landing, West Don Lands, block 8, and Canary Landing, West Don Lands, block 20. And the winner is Canary Landing, block 8, 125 Mill Street. The design team goes to design team is Kobe Design Architects Alliance, the Architectural Records, CCXA, formerly Claude Cormier and Associates, Landscape Architect, and Thornton Tomasetti, Canada Structural Engineer. The client is Dream and Kilmer Group and Tricon Residential. Canary Landing Design, particularly the use of the refined cladding and contrasting treatment of the lower and upper floors successfully references the heritage aspect of the precinct in a contemporary way. The gently curving precast cladding on the upper volumes echoes the grain silos that once dotted the waterfront, and the detailed brickwork on the lower volumes and in the public realm of the site into the historic distillery district across the street. Canary Landing is a remarkable and sophisticated project that raises the bar for residential design. So would you gentlemen please come up, and or ladies who are responsible for this wonderful creation. You have to pause for pictures.
I've been told I have to get them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Second award of the day is for excellence in commercial and or institutional design for a non-residential use building such as commercial, institutional, or infrastructural. The nominees are 30 Bay Street, Anishinaabe Health Toronto of the Indigenous Hub, Limberlost Place, the Rakai Center, and T3 Bayside Phase 1, And the winner is T3 Bayside Phase 1. The award goes to the team led by 3XN, WZMH, Janet Rosenberg and Studio, Magnuson Klemenchik, and the developer is Heinz. T3 Bayside Design represents an exceptionally ambitious and provocative commercial building. The project's use of mass timber is elegantly supported by its simple massing, punctuated by a string of double-height social spaces skillfully woven through the office floors. The innovation in mass timber is much needed as we grapple with the economic and environmental impacts of traditional construction methods. This building is a seminal project for the Toronto waterfront that sets a clear pathway for future high-quality commercial buildings in Canada. Please come up to accept your award. Congratulations.
All right, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next award is in the category of Excellence in Public Landscape Design for a park, streetscape, or other public open space project. The project must have been completed in the design review process 2019 to 2021. The nominees are Anishinaabe Health Toronto of Indigenous Hub, East Bayfront Boardwalk, Gardner Lakeshore East Public Realm, Portland's Flood Protection River and Parks, and the York Street Park. Guess who? The winner is the Portland's Flood Protection River and Parks. And this award goes to the team led by Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates, design lead and landscape architect. But I have to say that a representative of the firm is not able to be here today because Emily, who is a member of the panel, her twins came down with COVID and she didn't want to travel and risk anything. So she's at home, but I believe she is going to be or is on remotely now. So I hope, Emily, you're there and you can hear us.
I'm here.
Great, great. The client and developer is, of course, Waterfront Toronto. The new river and park in the Portland's flood protection project represents realization of a 50-year dream to reclaim the mouth of the Don River. The design sets a global precedent for the transformation of flood-prone post-industrial waterfronts into climate-resilient, ecologically rich, and socially inclusive urban districts. The district of the new river channel successfully references the dynamic and complex estuary systems found in the Great Lakes, and the design of the park skillfully integrates diverse recreational program with a forested buffer to create what will be one of the most significant new park systems in Toronto's history. And I have to say something personal. 50 years? Yeah, I remember it 50 years ago with David Crombie in terms of the dream of what if we could bring this river down through here and back out to the harbor or the lake. And David and I have talked about that quite a bit. And some of you, of course, know former Mayor Crombie. He's now 87 in wonderful health, fantastic. And, you know, he said to me, he says, you know, this precious gift you can give anybody is more time. I said, David, we're going to have more time because we're going to see that water flow. So 2024, it's not far away. It's a magnificent project. So congratulations. And I believe
Got some members of the staff.
we have members of the waterfront staff who will accept the award on behalf of Michael Van Valkenburg. Where are they? Shannon. Oh.
Thank you, Shannon.
Oh, great. There you go. Yeah, get up there, Chris. Big group, big group.
All right. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, I can get back to work.
Smart to do.
What are you gonna do next, George?
The fourth award of the day is given for excellence in planning or urban design for a precinct plan, a master plan, public open space plan, or development plan. The nominees this year are the Gardner and Lakeshore Boulevard East Public Realm. And can anyone guess the winner? Gardner and Lakeshore Boulevard East Public Realm. The award goes to the team led by West 8 and Dillon Consulting, and the client is Waterfront Toronto. The design of the Lakeshore Boulevard Public Realm sets a new precedent for human-scale, pedestrian-friendly infrastructure. By creating a network of green linkages along the corridor, a vibrant public realm will emerge in a formerly desolate area. This project exemplifies how novel forms of public open space can be developed out of idiosyncratic, residual, and contested spaces. The design successfully blurs park and infrastructure, a truly innovative and critical initiative that will facilitate recalibrating the relationship that citizens of the city have to this area. Please come up and accept your award.
Jump in this one. Too.
All right. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Okay, great. The next category is excellence in design innovation. For a project that addresses environmental, social, and other contemporary issues through design and research. Project must have been completed, of course, in the last 3 years, as in the others. The nominees are the Indigenous Hub, West Don Lands Block 10, Lakeshore Pilot Project, Limberlost Place, the Rakai Center, West Don Lands Block 5, and T3 Bayside Phase 1. And the winner is Limberlost Place, 185 Queen Street East. The client, the design team is the Moriyama and Tashima, Acton Austri Architect, Studio TLA, Landscape Architect, Fast and EP Structural Engineer, and of course the client is George Brown College. The design of Limberlost Place features innovation throughout. Combination of elements, including solar chimneys, rooftop photovoltaic cells, panels, decentralized mechanical systems, ventilated hallways, operable windows allows building to have zero carbon emissions. The passive ventilation mode allows the building to operate passively 50% of the year. Team is also to be commended for their willingness to leverage the project for market transformation, pushing policy and sharing lessons learned to build industry capacity. Project will be exemplar for all institutional projects. Congratulations.
3, 2, 1. More. 3, 2, 1. One more.
Oh, no. Oh.
Thanks.
Great.
So the next two awards are for excellence in built work. This series of awards is for a completed building, landscape, infrastructure, or neighborhood that delivers on the original design intent. The project must have been constructed between, finished construction, let's say, between 2019 and 2021. And this year we have 2 awards in this category. The nominees are Aquabella, River City Buildings RC3 and RC4, Stormwater Management Facility, Tommy Thompson Park Pavilion, and 10 York. The first award goes to the Stormwater Management Facility. The award goes to a team led by GH3 and RV Anderson. The builder is Graham Construction and the client is Waterfront Toronto. The design of the Stormwater Management Facility celebrates the legacy of exceptional municipal architecture like the RC Harris Water Treatment Plant. It is an elegant, beautifully detailed sculptural work that will engage and delight the public and prove that beautifully designed infrastructure buildings are an essential aspect of city building. The stormwater management facility is a true model of multi-beneficial infrastructure, and the waterfront will be a more delightful place with city infrastructure treated with this level of design and craft.
3, 2, 1. One more. Thank you.
And the second award goes to the team, goes to River City Buildings RC3 and RC4. Yeah. The second award goes to the team, yes, for RC3 and RC4. The award goes to the team led by, for RC3, Saucier and Perrot, Claude Cormier and Associates, and Reed Jones Christopherson. And for RC4, Saucier and Perrot, Forek with ZAS, Reed Jones Christopherson, and Graham Construction with a client of Urban Capital. Please come up to the super award. Here. I think you have to come up and have a picture for the morning.
And have somebody receive this award.
You can hold all three.
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Okay, we're at number 8. Claude's got so many awards, he doesn't know what to do with them. Number 8, the Hall of Fame category. As Chris said at the beginning, we created this category for projects that had been, around for what, 5 years as a minimum, I believe. And this is for a completed building, landscape, infrastructure, neighborhood, or master plan whose contributions to the waterfront have been significant, catalytic, and enduring. Project must have been built in the last 5 years. The winner in this category are the wave decks for the Toronto waterfront. The design team, while they're coming up, I'll read this off. The award goes, of course, to the team led by West 8, DTHA in joint venture with landscape architects, Halsall Associates, structural engineer. Builder is Somerville Construction. The client, of course, is Waterfront Toronto. When they first opened, the wave decks captured the world's attention and imagination, becoming part of the iconic landscape of the nascent revitalization project led by Waterfront Toronto. Creative use of form and materiality, along with the emphasis of connecting people to the lake, established a unique design language for the water's edge. Simcoe Wave Deck, with its deeply undulating curves, has become a must-see destination on the waterfront, and is the trip type provide a truly unique palette of that calls for extension to the remaining slips. The wave decks are bold, inspirational designs that represent the legacy of Toronto. And I remember when the wave decks were at the waterfront panel many, many years ago. And it was a subject of debate back and forth, I don't know, are they going to be safe? Will people need a railing? Will they fall off? All those kinds of questions, right? And basically, I remember the sort of overall view was, no, we got to do this. This is just so important to extend the fabric of the public realm out over the waterfront. And ever since they've been built on day one, people are just going to them like bees to honey. They're fantastic. And I love them, and I will always love them, and we're going to have more of them. So congratulations.
That's what I'm saying. We can move over.
It looks better in one line.
Okay. Oh, all right. We'll just get out of here.
Yeah, right there.
Oh, 3, 1, 1 line.
Come on. Right there. Now, 3, 2, 1. One more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Okay, now the second award in this category goes to Canada's Sugar Beach. So the award goes to the team led by CCXA, formerly Clark Cormier and Associates, the Planning Partnership, and the Municipal Infrastructure Group, the builders Eastern Construction Company and Aldershot Landscape Company, and the client is Waterfront Toronto. Please come up to accept your award. Canada's Sugar Beach is a special transformative project that is well used year-round. The iconic and playful pink umbrellas, willows, pines, and white sand juxtaposed with massive cargo ships offloading at the Redpath Sugar Plant create moments that are unique to our waterfront and undoubtedly Toronto. The park's weaving together of thoughtful public space principles and sophisticated branding landed it in the eye and heart of visitors, designers, and civic leaders alike. It remains as one of the most fun spaces in Canada. The creativity and imagination displayed by the project and design team is highly commended. Congratulations.
Four, three, two, one. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've come to the final award. Oh boy, it's been fun. Number 10, Hall of Fame for a completed building, landscape, infrastructure, neighborhood, or master plan's contribution to the waterfront, significant, catalytic, and enduring. And obviously built over the last 3 years. And the award winner is Corktown Common, 155 Bayview Avenue, completed in 2014. The award goes to the team led by Michael Van Valkenburg, design lead landscape architect, and Marianne Thompson, architects, and Arup project engineer, builder Eastern Construction Company, and Aldershot Landscape. Client is Waterfront Toronto. Corktown Common was designed to couple critical flood protection infrastructure with social and civic programming. In doing so, it helped regenerate the ecological and environmental health of the area, enabling the construction of the Canary District and a new park rich in experience and amenity. It demonstrates that parks can offer a range of activities for multi-generational enjoyment and whose hard urban boundaries are eased by its expertly designed landscape edge. Project helped launch the redevelopment of the West Don Lands and is now public heart of the entire project. And also, I have to say something personal about this, because I remember when this was way back, we were looking at the Front Street design, the park, the flood proofing issue and everything. And I remember seeing maps of 100-year floods, et cetera, that would extend almost as far as, I'll call it, the old O'Keefe Center on darn near at Yonge Street. And this is really critical. And a lot of members of the public, I know, asked me, like, what is that big mound there? Like, that's a weird kind of thing. What's happening? And when they understand how all the pieces work together, they get it. And it's one of the most loved areas, I think, in the West Don Lands right now. So congratulations to all the teams. I think it's going to be a fabulous legacy.
I think again, we don't have anything, so.
Thank you. I'm here. Thanks again.
Okay, so believe it or not, that's all the fun you're going to have this afternoon. 10 awards, fabulous projects. I just want to thank you on behalf of the panel, the Waterfront Toronto staff, George, everyone. Special congratulations to those that have won those awards and those that have come forward to the panel and really want to make this waterfront very special. As Chris said in his introduction, we only have one waterfront. And yeah, it's a rigorous process we go through here, but it matters because you only got the one waterfront. And most people that I know that have not been to the waterfront are blown away when they come down here. I'm going to tell you one last personal story. Every year, I take a group of long-term care residents from Belmont House. They're in their 80s and 90s. And we had a special bus that comes down and wheelchairs, the whole thing. And I tour them around in the bus and the waterfront. We end up, at Sugar Beach Chorus Entertainment and the restaurant overlooking the water with the great promenade. And I explained everything to them. And you know what? It just warms my heart. Some of those people said to me, I think I'm in a resort. You know, I haven't been down here in 50 years. So, honest to God, some Torontonians haven't been to the waterfront 50, 40, 30 years. And it just made me smile, and it's all worthwhile. So everyone appreciates all the work that's been done here. And I want to thank everyone again for all their hard work. And now we come to the serious business. We have to have a social and mingle, and there's something at the end of the room for people to enjoy themselves. So please stay if you can and grab a bite or a drink. And thank you again for coming.